just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone here with Ryan Roberts. It is guard week. We are continuing on our scouting report evaluation episodes for what is a very underwhelming guard class. So we talked about the first day, Osiris Torrance from Florida and Christian Mahogany from Boston College. I think we both had positive things to say about those guys. And today we're moving on to the bottoming out part of this guard class. We're not really moving on to anyone exciting. It's not like the other position groups where we have some fun names to talk about. Instead, we're here with Andrew Vorhees from USC and Emil Ekiyor from Alabama. And we're going to get to evaluating these guys, Ryan. But both are, I can't even say underwhelming, because I had not much of an expectation, and I was not really that surprised or excited.
That's always my favorite when you don't have expectations going into a film session, though, because then you just have a real legitimate.
But I had no expectations, and they still managed to
not move the needle. Not move the needle for you.
What's the opposite of moving the needle?
Not moving the needle.
Okay, obviously, I meant, is there like a never mind?
Treading water. Treading water.
That's not what I was going for. Well, it's more so put me to sleep.
Though.
Put me to sleep, I think, is the better way to.
They put you to. I mean, that happens with guards
sometimes.
I
was bored.
That happens with guards sometimes, though. I mean, it's just kind of the nature of the position at times. It's just usually when you're bored to death, that usually is kind of a good thing, to be honest. But
yes, but for the wrong reasons. I think if you're bored watching an offensive lineman, it's because they're consistent and they're getting the job done. But and our listeners might have figured this out, and you've definitely figured this out. I get excited when guys do stuff that they're not supposed to be doing athletically or physically, and they're dropping guys, and they've got a lot of weight behind their hits and their blocks. But I fell asleep just because there's just nothing exciting. There was nothing good that was happening on tape that I was like, wow, this is a redeeming quality.
They've both played a lot of football, man. A whole lot of football. I believe. Let me just double check. Yes, Ekiyor is entered.
I don't mean to cut you off, but yeah. Voorhees entered when I went to school in 2016.
Yeah, man. He's a 6th-year senior coming up this year, and Emil Ekiyor is a 5th-year senior. So they've played a lot of football. And I told you this before the show. I didn't tell you who, because I like organic responses.
Oh,
but I do like one of these guys for a specific role. But I know we'll get more into that. Obviously,
we will get into that. Before we do, though, folks, I want to tell you about today's partner, BetOnline. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, sports developments, including this year's NHL Stanley Cup Finals. This read is not updated. Thanks. Major League Baseball and the latest fighting news and even next season's early NFL futures.
Did you just say?
I just said nudes. I just said nudes. I'm so disoriented by this bad read. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to sign up today or receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE to get the bonus and get into the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And folks, don't do what I did last night, where you're on a heater. I had 5 bets in a row, Ryan, that I was on a heater. And I confidently placed a bet on the Los Angeles Dodgers to cover a -1.5 spread against the Cincinnati Reds, who are abysmal. I put most of my bankroll, like a significant amount of my bankroll, on this bet because I was so cocky. Ryan, turns out I bet on the Los Angeles Angels to cover -1.5, and they lost.
Man. Joe, do you ever win any bets?
I just told you I was on a heater. I was on 5 in a row.
Okay.
I don't bet baseball. Every time I bet baseball.
Yeah, why would anybody bet baseball? It doesn't make any sense.
I need something to bet over the summer, and I was going to try and build up my bankroll over the summer. But
stop being a degenerate, man. Stop being a degenerate.
It's not degeneratism.
You know what? When you were doing, yeah, I know it's not. You're right. When you were doing the ad read, I was trying to think of some play on words to joke with you about you saying nudes, because that was one of the funniest things that ever happened. That was fantastic.
Well, clearly you haven't listened to the FCS show, because the amount of gaffes I have with reads is far significant, because You don't
I listen
knock
to
me
it.
off my path as much as Sean does.
Oh, I listened to it, man. I listened to the one this morning where I think someone made fun of me at one point. That's why I stopped listening to that show, because you guys make fun
Oh,
of me.
you're still gonna listen. You're still gonna listen. Let's talk about these two players. Let's start with Andrew Voorhees. I thought he was fine, and for a player who we're talking about how he's a 6th-year guy, he's been there forever at USC, playing left guard last season. I just think that this is like a depth guy. This is a late day 3 player. I think that his footwork for me, Ryan, was a bit sloppy. One of the things technique wise, I just think overall his technique's not really there. One of the things that bugged the hell out of me watching him is his hand placement wasn't great. And then he kept doing this goofy thing where he would have his elbows out really, really wide while trying to block players. And that infuriated me trying to watch him.
What a weird thing to actually, that's not a weird thing to notice.
It's a technique issue because you can't,
it's good posture.
You can't generate force with your elbows out wide. The technique that they teach is they want your elbows in and arms in. You're also, it's easier to get called for holding when you're out wide like that.
I was gonna say, if your elbows are also out wide, that means that your hands are gonna get wider, and that leads to holding calls as well. So yes, you're correct. So is this a hot take? I don't know if this is a hot take. You tell me what you think about this.
All right, this is
because I don't disagree with your opinion of Andrew Voorhees. I think that he is a mid to late day 3 type of player who is a swing player at the next level, because he's played spots at tackle and guard during his career,
and he has the frame for it.
He has a good frame, not great length, but I think as a guard at the next level, everything is sufficient. There's no one trait that pops out at you, but everything across the board from a physical perspective is just solid enough, in my opinion. I think he's considerably better than Emil Ekiyor, though. Like, considerably.
Oh, I don't think that's a hot take. And I believe that both of these guys have very similar strength profiles. I would argue that Voorhees has a little bit more, and why I would consider Voorhees better than Ekiyor in this situation is the improvement that he has in terms of his size. I know Ekiyor has long arms despite being a 6'2" guard, which is weird, but the size profile allows Voorhees to get away with more of his mistakes than Ekiyor does.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk more about Ekiyor, obviously. I have a big take about him that we'll leave it there for now.
Let's keep talking about Voorhees.
Yes, I'm sorry. There is something to be said, though, from the offensive line position about guys that have played multiple spots, like a guy like Andrew Voorhees has. He started multiple games at multiple positions, and he actually played pretty well at left tackle, despite the fact that he's not going to be a left tackle at the next level. But he is a guy that I think can get you out of a game at right tackle. I think that he could back up multiple spots. Anytime you can do that and you're 6'6", 325 pounds, and you've played a lot of football, the consistency factor and the experience he has, I think those things all parlay for sticking points on an NFL roster. So I would not be shocked if Andrew Voorhees carves out a decent role at the next level as a swing player, sticks around for some time. Starter upside, not much. I don't see that in him, but I think I see stay power, which I like. So if you're going to go into this film session and want Andrew Voorhees to be a starting caliber offensive lineman at the next level, you're going to be a little disappointed. But for me, he has requisite traits and experience that I could look at him and say, the kid can stick around as a backup, as a swing type player at the next level.
All those things definitely equate to a backup quality guard, or even, as you're saying, as a swing tackle. He's big enough to play tackle because he's 6'5". I think he might have been listed at like 6'6" based on the scouting information that we had.
Yeah.
I just, the only thing that irked me on him is he's experienced and he's played all this time, but his technique, it sucked for a guy who's going into his 6th year. I obviously am going to point at Clay Helton and the USC coaching staff for improperly developing a player like Andrew Voorhees, and maybe his technique is cleaned up now under Lincoln Riley, but I don't think any of his physical traits are exciting. Like, I don't think there's any upside necessarily there because he's not that strong of an athlete, and I don't think he really effectively uses his size as dominantly as maybe he could.
Well, I think he has a clean frame though, which is nice to see. And one thing I do like about him, Joe, especially at guard, the kid plays hard. He finds work in pass protection specifically. Like he's not just one of those guys. You talked about it yesterday where hit your set, nobody over top of you, and you just kind of stand there, right? Like that's just no. He'll find work, which I do like to a degree, right? So I think that there's nothing sexy about him, but I do think that he has some stay power as a backup at the next level. I do. I know it's not this. I feel bad for the listeners out there, man, because this is not going to be an exciting episode. I apologize to you all.
But this is my whole point when I came into the episode, and we're putting everybody to sleep. This is an episode you listen to before bed if you need help falling asleep, folks, because we're talking about the two most boring players in the draft class. I think we've hit not rock bottom in terms of content, but the quality of prospects that we've discussed on the show. This is easily the worst pairing.
Well, I would say this, though. If you want an illustration of how bad the guard class is, we had to do this show. This is only our third pairing of the week. We're only on 5 and 6.
No, this is our second pairing.
Yeah, I know, but we have one that's better tomorrow, right? Like that's a better pairing than this one.
Yeah, and it's a little odd circumstantially because we're talking about tackles, undersized tackles that are probably going to get converted to guard at the next level.
Which again illustrates how bad this class is. I mean, if you want more proof, we literally had to go to tackle converts for this week as well.
Can we talk punters or kickers on the next show this week?
I would be fine with that.
All right, so we're not doing another guard show. We're only talking punters.
If you can get me names, I'll scout punters.
All right, let me get some texts out. Let me.
You're a guy that's around. You're a specialist guy, but yet you don't know anyone. It's weird.
I know enough people.
You don't know any of these players.
That's a good point. Ryan, I want to talk about Ekiyor though really quick. So Ekiyor is a stump. This guy's a bowling ball. He's not very big.
To quote Joe DeLeone in the last 2 podcasts I've heard him on, he's a dump truck.
No, I don't think he's a dump truck because he's not very strong.
But I mean, he looks like a dump truck.
He looks like a tree stump is what he looks like. He's very stout. He's got strangely long arms. He's got 33 plus inch arms, which is weird. I was fully expecting when I looked up the verified numbers that we have for it to be like 30. I was expecting like short arms because he's so stumpy, but makes up for it a little bit. I was even more put to sleep watching than watching Andrew Voorhees. I think he's a little bit better technically because he's on a team that coaches offensive linemen well. I
think he's a little better of a mover than Voorhees. Too.
Yeah,
like a little more explosive.
Well, he should be.
Yeah,
smaller.
You know what I hate about him? Hate's a strong word, but one thing that just turns me off. One thing that turns me off about him so much is he is like you called him a stump, right? Like he is a stocky.
You're pulling to me right now. Stocky.
Shut up. He's a stocky built kid, and yet his power is not very good. And then I'm looking at him, and I'm just like, because people are gonna be like, "Oh, he can add weight." Where's he gonna add weight? Because at some point you're gonna add too much weight. He's maxed out. At some point you're gonna add too much weight, and you're gonna kill what athletic traits that he does have, because that's the best part of his game right now, in my opinion, is that he moves relatively well for his size. So just really odd, man. Because like I looked at it, like you look at his body, and you're just kind of like, wow, that dude's gonna be a powerhouse, like there's gonna be a lot of power in that frame, and there's just not. It's the weirdest thing in the world. I don't get it.
The other thing as well with these shorter guards and sometimes guys with these profile tend to be, that play center. Sorry, is what I'm going to say. They tend to have really good leverage. Like that tends to be an advantage. I always think back to hearing Sean O'Hara talk about how he was able to win was getting to his points first and also having the leverage advantage by getting underneath these bigger guys' pads easier. That's why a guy like Aaron Donald on the opposite side of the ball causes so many problems for guards and tackles and centers, is because they can't get lower than him because he's so much shorter. And I don't think that Ekiyor uses his leverage to his advantage. I would argue, and I made a note that Voorhees plays a little high. I would argue that Ekiyor doesn't. It's not that he plays high, but he could be playing a lot freaking lower for a guy that's only 6'2". It's weird. It's bizarre. And again, you're talking about that strength. I didn't get any dominance. I didn't get any, wow, he's really scooping guys out. He's really popping guys because he's low to the ground and he's strong. He's got none of that.
He's got a weird following too, because if you see him in like mock drafts, not like a first round mock draft guy, but like second, third round, they have Emil Ekiyor. Man. They do. Here's the take.
Exposed, and wait, before you get to your take, we exposed or not exposed. We crapped on PFF on the FCS pod for the first 10 minutes, which I know you enjoyed.
I heard that. Yeah.
Wait, what publications are putting this guy in the second, third round? Because clearly
it's been there, man. It's been there. It's been there for the last couple of years because he was a guy that was potentially going to leave last year for the draft. So it's been there, man. This guy's got a little bit of fanfare to him, which is a little odd. It is, weird. But yeah, my take is that I don't think he's a draftable player. UDFA. For me, I wouldn't draft him.
Yeah, I honestly did not fully formulate a round projection for him, now that I think about it. I did for Voorhees. I would say 7th round PFA. I would agree with that because all the things that we highlighted here, his technique's okay. His leverage usage and his angles are okay. Could be better. Yep. Lacks the strength, lacks the length. My man's not getting drafted.
And he's also only played one single position in his career too. So the versatility side of everything, you're not helping yourself at all either. This is a weird one, man. I don't even know what to say about him anymore, to be honest. Like Emil Ekiyor has been a guy that's been talked about for a couple years because he's been. Has he been starting for 3 years or 2 years? 2 years?
I don't know off the top of my head, but he's definitely been a starter for a long time.
At least the 2-year starter. Maybe this might be his 4th year of starting. It's at least his 3rd year starting coming up here. So he's played a lot of football, man, and he's just not good. I'm sorry, Emil, because he's an Indiana guy, I think, originally, and I don't know. Yeah, he's just not very good.
Ryan, here's Toxic Joe stepping in here. So I made my comments about Blake Freeland. Yeah, I love being toxic. I have to say that for the hobbyist scouts, which I like to think I'm not a hobbyist scout. I like to think that we're doing this somewhat professionally to an extent because we're doing good enough coverage. The hobbyists get upset when you're toxic for pointing out and calling out ways that people evaluate. And you're talking about how some people are high on him. And when we did the Blake Freeland episode, some people kind of pushed back on my comments on saying, like, I understand why certain people like Freeland, those that don't really understand the game that well, are going to love him because he wins easily. But when you deep dive, and when I dove on him a little bit more, it was easier to kind of uncover why he's winning and why some of those issues need to be corrected before you can really buy in on him. And I think Ekiyor fits that conversation point. It makes sense why people are going to say he deserves to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Those that don't really understand the nuances of playing offensive line are going to like him because he's played multiple seasons and he doesn't necessarily lose a lot of reps. He does a fine job playing in the SEC, but when you break him down further, that's when you find the problems with the size, with the length, with the power. And once you're willing to acknowledge those things, that's when you come to the conclusion that we're having right now, that he is not worthy of being drafted, or at the very least is a 6th or 7th round pick.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I just don't know what are you wearing your hat on with him? You know, like it's
that's my point. People that don't know what they're talking about obviously are going to be the ones that like him.
I would honestly just love to hear, excuse me, I would love to hear someone's perspective on what is his stay power? What is it about him that entices you? Because I look at him and I just say, you're maxed out, but you're not incredibly powerful. You're a decent athlete, but in order to get your power profile higher, you may have to sacrifice some of your athleticism. And you're not a dominant player, even though you've been playing multiple years and you've only been playing one position. So I don't get the Emil Ekiyor thing. He's got a great name. I love the name. That's a starting level caliber name at the next level, but he's not a starting caliber player, in my opinion.
But before we wrap, just a random point. Who the hell was Alabama's center last year? He sucks. He's worse than Ekiyor.
His name's like Decor or something. Dedicor or something. I'm going to look it up. They had a very inexperienced interior offensive line outside of him. They had the number 70 is Cohen, the other offensive guard. I remember that one off the top of my head. And the others and the center, as I am stalling for time.
Yeah, wait, I'm trying to.
It's under the
radio.
D. It is great radio. So stalling for time. Where is D? I think here it is. His name is
Darian Dalcourt.
Yes,
I didn't think he was very good either. I
don't think anyone on that offensive line is very good outside of Evan Neal last year. It was not a good offensive line, man. That was one of the worst offensive lines I've seen Alabama have. It was bad. They had Chris Owens starting at right tackle, who was he's on somebody's preseason roster this year, but he was a 6'2", 6'3" backup center at one point, playing right tackle. Evan Neal was the real deal, went top 10, sure. So then you have Ekiyor and Cohen at guards. Both aren't very good in my opinion. Then you have the Dalcourt kid at center. I mean, it just was not very good.
Do they have anybody in the wings that I'm just curious on?
That was the weirdest part is they have number 65. Do you have the roster still up? Number 65 was a freshman last year. Come on, man.
Wait one second.
He was a high recruit. They also have a kid named Tommy Brockermeyer, who was a high recruit as well, but number 65 was their biggest recruit. His name is escaping me, but he was like a 5-star recruit, if I remember correctly.
Wait, I got it. 65. You said 65.
Number 65.
JC Latham.
Oh, JC Latham. Yep. So they have JC Latham and
it's
Tommy
an IMG
Brockermeyer.
kid.
Yep. JC Latham and Tommy Brockermeyer were both true freshmen last year. So I'm assuming they didn't want to throw them into the fire. They also have Tyler Steen, who transferred over from Vanderbilt, who could be playing one of the tackles this year. He's not very good, though, either. I'm hoping that they eventually just say, like, okay, Latham and Brockermeyer, you're our sophomore offensive tackles. Like, but I don't know if that's what they're going to do. Because, yeah.
Well, it is going to be an interesting year for this Alabama offensive line. Guard talk in June, folks. You have to really be addicted to football to love this crap. But, folks, thank you for tuning in. At Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft, at NFL Prospects Pod, Hack City on YouTube, and wherever you can find us for audio. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. We will be back with another very tantalizing and exciting discussion on